The story The Last Church by Graham McNeil was released in 2009 and, according to my research, is the second story chronologically in the Horus Heresy. Kind of. Maybe. Events don't line up as cleanly as I would like, but I'll go into that later, and whether I still think this story is second chronologically.
First, a quick catch-up. So far, we have established that the Emperor is at the tail end of his planet-wide war to unify Terra under his ideal called the Imperial Truth, which decries and forbids any form of worship, faith, or superstition. The Imperium is in its infancy, and is now the governing body of the planet. The Primarchs are lost and scattered across space, and the Emperor's plans to spread his Imperial Truth out into the stars is well underway and preparing to launch the, I use the word loosely, success of the Space Marine project. In the meantime, the Emperor is just tying up loose ends on Terra, and there's something going on up on the moon or something.
So this story is set on Terra, right at the very end of the Unification Wars. The planet is now seen as being entirely under the Emperor's rule, and has been for at least 80 years, give or take a rebellion here or there.
This story centres around the last priest on Terra, an 80-something-year-old man called Uriah Olather, as he awaits his dwindling congregation for what is pretty much midnight mass at his church. The Church of the Lightning Stone stands upon a high, flat mountain, hidden away and difficult to reach, which Uriah surmises must have been why it has survived so long while all other churches have been torn down. Despite its location, it has still had a small following, and people still make the pilgrimage to worship the god and the holy object of worship. A spear-tipped stone monolith said to have been struck by lightning, which provided healing properties to a nearby holy man who was atop the mountain when it happened, healing him of his deaf and blindness and revealing a natural spring of which it is claimed the water from also had healing properties. Seen as an act from God, a church was built around the stone atop the mountain and has endured, although dwindling to this very day.
Presumably, a giant golden magic man with an army of 8-foot supermen outlawing religion probably has something to do with attendance numbers.
Uriah resides within the church, and upon the altar of the church stands an old clock tarnished in bronze with a cracked face. Uriah had stolen this clock during his reckless youth and was cryptically warned by the man he stole it from that if the clock ever chimes, it will herald the doom of all mankind.
I'm sure that won't play a part in the story at all, and he was given that information for no reason.
So during this stormy night, as Uriah awaits his congregation, 2 minutes before midnight, the doors open, and in walks a tall man wearing a scarlet cloak, with dark hair and tanned leathery skin from a life of experiences outdoors. Behind the man, Uriah notices a host of shadowy figures waiting outside the church, carrying what look like flaming torches. The doors close behind the man, and Uriah invites him and his friends in to join the service, which the figure bluntly refuses on behalf of everyone. Uriah immediately senses that something isn't quite right. The man, while looking fairly normal, has a martial aura about him, making him seem more than he appears. Uriah also has a gnawing but brief sense of recognition. The mystery man tells Uriah he can call him Revelation, and as the two converse, he reveals himself as having a strong disdain for religious leaders, finding them humorless and dour-hearted, to which Uriah cheerfully rebuts that he must have only met the wrong type of priest. The two ponder a giant painted mural on the roof ceiling, depicting a battle between a golden knight and a silver dragon, while debating divine influences on creativity.
There is a theory that the depicted golden knight could actually be the Emperor, fighting a dragon of some kind. Some surmise a shard of the Void Dragon, but who knows?
Tired of the debate, Uriah asks Revelation why he has come to his church this night. To which Revelation states he has come to try and understand why the priest still holds his beliefs. Uriah suspects Revelation is an agent of the Emperor, come to shut the church down, acknowledging he is aware that his little church is the last one left on Terra. Uriah continues to indulge Revelation nonetheless, in an attempt to convince him of the value of faith. Uriah brings him to the lightning stone itself. Revelation attempts to debunk the mysticism surrounding the stone, going as far to cite, although not by name, the real-life case of Edwin Robinson, who, after a traumatic vehicle accident, lost his sight and hearing. Then, 9 years later, he claimed to have been struck by lightning, which restored his sight, hearing, and as a bonus, also cured his baldness.
So this was corroborated by doctors, and there are scientific explanations out there. But it's still strange to see this historic oddity from the 1980s mentioned in the year 30,000, or wherever we are at.
Throughout all of their discussions, Uriah becomes more and more frustrated, commenting it is a malicious act to try and destroy another human being's faith. To which, of course, Revelation reassures him, saying, "Oh no man, I'm just trying to understand." Revelation is a very smug and I would say unlikable character in this. He does have moments of kindness or understanding, but none of it comes across as sincere to me. Revelation pushes the subject, asking Uriah why he's not even willing to try and understand in a different way. In an act of defiance, Uriah informs Revelation that he has had a personal experience of the divine during a war in Frank many years ago, stating that all the debunking in the world wouldn't be able to take that experience and all the feelings that come with it away from him. It's pretty obvious Frank is clearly meant to be France in this, much like the Himalayans were Himalaysians in Valdor. Revelation continues to diminish Uriah's religion. Now, fully annoyed, Uriah sits down and professes to give Revelation what he wants: a debate. But then after this, come morning, Revelation is never to set foot in Uriah's church again, which Revelation agrees to. The two spar in the age-old argument of the religious versus the agnostic, hitting all the talking points you'd expect from a debate me bro, edgy neckbeard atheist versus one of those weird religious guys that hang around schools trying to gotcha unsuspecting students.
Actually, that's a bit harsh. Uriah, for the most part, comes across as a very genuine character, and he's rightly upset that some complete stranger has come into his place and attempted to tear down one of the biggest aspects of his identity.
Uriah also continues to notice something is not quite right with Revelation, who appears to put strain upon anything he touches or stands upon, like he is somehow impossibly larger and heavier than he appears. Uriah then reveals his backstory, which is actually really interesting and gives us insight into the effects of the Unification Wars and the mysterious Thunder Warriors, who, despite appearing in both of my Law & Order videos so far, information on them is actually quite sparse. Uriah tells of a spoilt youth who upon adulthood travelled the world to find the last patch of land free from the banners of the Emperor. Uriah speaks of his search and a run-in with the Emperor's Thunder Warriors whilst visiting a town in which he drunkenly antagonises them so they throw him from the nearby cliff into the sea. Unable to find anywhere free from the Emperor, and now, with increased disdain, changes his methods, no longer travelling as a tourist, instead trying to uncover and join pockets of resistance as a mercenary. He travels to Frank to join a rebellion under the leadership of a charismatic man who was sentenced to execution by the Imperium. The man, who was favoured by his local community, claimed he'd been wrongfully accused of the assault and murder of one of the Imperium's governors. The locals took up arms to protect the man from his fate, killing the local garrison of guardsmen and taking the town back for itself. Inspired by this act of revolution, young Uriah joins them. Revelation explains to Uriah that actually the man had indeed been guilty and had manipulated the town to his own whims, which Uriah does regretfully acknowledge that he eventually found this out later on. Uriah continues to talk about his short experience in the revolution and how happy he had been made to feel by the sense of freedom and unity that came with it. This then takes a dark turn, as he talks of their first engagement with the Thunder Warriors at Goudoir as they came to retake the town. Despite outnumbering them 10 to 1, the Thunder Warriors massacre the revolution with ease. Uriah describes witnessing their weaponry, which we know as bolt guns, and how they blew people apart, making it seem like they were exploding from the inside out, and of the sight the advancing Thunder Warriors bearing chainswords, butchering everyone in sight. Men, women, people surrendering or fleeing or begging for their lives, it did not matter. They were cut down in equally brutal manners. Uriah was struck in the back of the head by a sharp bone fragment from one of his exploding comrades, cutting him deeply. Though bleeding and terrified, he fled, and managed to make it into a nearby forest in which he collapsed. When he awoke later, alive and unfound, he experienced his divine intervention. His wound had completely healed, and a golden face bathed in beauty appeared before him and spoke. "Why do you deny me? Accept me, and you will know that I am the only truth and the only way." After this, Uriah fled straight home, only to find his family had been defiled and murdered by raiders. A strange shift going from a divine miracle to a dead family. Anyway, now completely alone, Uriah packs up the last of his family's belongings and leaves to find a new life. He tells us that on his way to a neighbouring town, he found the Church of the Lightning Stone. Joining them and serving God became his life's purpose. Revelation tries to reassure Uriah with the knowledge that the raiders that killed his family were themselves killed 30 years ago, and shows a somewhat genuine respect towards Uriah for the dismissive attitude he holds towards the death of his family's murderers under his religious belief of forgiveness and God's justice. He does, of course, then reiterate that this divine intervention could have just been psychological or stress-induced. Straight back into edgy atheist mode. Revelation then reveals he has come to turn Uriah away from his religion, and that, either way, by the end of the night, the church would be done. Uriah pours his heart out and gets a threat in return. Nice. Revelation states it is his turn to convince Uriah, and talks of the many atrocities religious belief has caused throughout history. He brings up a religious body of the past called the Inquisition, and goes on to tell Uriah the horrors of their witch hunts and the mass murders in the name of their god. Sounds familiar, doesn't it? The talk of bloodshed continues to upset Uriah, who, frustrated, leaves to attend his service and pray alone. Whilst praying at the altar, Revelation continues to goad him and abruptly interrupts his prayer. Revelation really is being a dick. Uriah says he's done, and for Revelation to just get on with whatever he has come to do. Revelation obliges. In an unfurling of golden light, Revelation reveals himself as none other than the Emperor of Mankind himself. Whoever could have seen that coming? Awestruck at the reveal, Uriah now understands why he had not been all that he had appeared to be, and recognises at once that the face he had seen on the battlefield of Goudoir, the divine face that had appeared to him and healed him, was in fact that of the Emperor.
I find this very interesting. Why is this? Did the Emperor project an image of himself back through time? Did he manipulate Uriah's recollection? Or did he choose a visage based on the one within Uriah's mind? It's left up to the reader's interpretation as to what's happened here. But it just makes for one of those great Warhammer ironies.
That the Emperor is quite literally tearing down someone's faith in him, because it's not the correct type of faith. A faith that, in a way that may well have been his own doing, if you walk like a god, talk like a god, and act like a god. Don't get mad when people mistake you for a god. So with this revelation, Uriah seemingly aligns with the Emperor. Like a veil lifted, he ponders whether his belief had been a mistake or a lie. He comes to the conclusion that it doesn't matter either way. His particular religion and how he had shared it had spread positivity amongst its followers and within himself. Following the Emperor outside into the stormy night, he realises the figures outside are all towering warriors. Uriah recognises them from Goudoir, which to me would tell us they're Thunder Warriors.
But at this point in my timeline, the Thunder Warriors had already been wiped out. So whether this is a last unit personally overseen by the Emperor, or maybe I've just got it wrong already with video number 2. I think they are specifically spoken about as Thunder Warriors, because the Emperor does speak about having the precursors in his gene lab, but he also calls them generals. He has generals in his gene lab to replace them, which would suggest he's talking about the Primarchs, which if that's the case, that means they haven't been scattered yet. So this would be before Valdor. But then Uriah speaks of their armour, and he says that it's more enclosed than the previous iterations that he had seen, which is reminiscent of the Mark II armour rather than the more open-plated Mark I armour worn by the Thunder Warriors. But then he also says about the plumed helmets, which is more common with the Mark I Thunder armour. They have the plumed helmets, the Mark II doesn't. So are they Space Marines that Uriah has mistaken for Thunder Warriors? Possible, but if that's the case, that would then make this deployment of Space Marines to be before the first ones before Valdor. Because in Valdor we see one of their first engagements, so that would place these Space Marines before them. Probably get used to this. There's going to be a lot of timey-wimey shenanigans, I feel, in the future. So the only way that this can work in my current timeline is if the Emperor is not referring to the Primarchs. These generals are not Primarchs, which doesn't really make any sense because he's not making any other specific generals. He wouldn't refer to generic Space Marines as generals. Or the more plausible and simpler option is that yes, the last church actually does come before Valdor, Birth of the Imperium. And so I think that's what I'm getting convinced towards as well at the moment. So ladies and gentlemen, by video 2 I can safely announce I've probably got the timeline wrong. Anyway, the story's not finished yet.
Uriah realises that they are not carrying torches, but flaming weapons, and watches as they begin to set his church ablaze. Horrified, he begins to snap out of his awe, and once again questions the Emperor's motives, and how he can just flat out destroy an icon of historical importance and all the knowledge that resides within. The Emperor dismisses this, stating that his world order will be all humanity needs, and shares with Uriah that the next step is to take his ideals and unify the rest of humanity among the stars under his sole vision. Uriah calls him mad and refers to him as a hypocrite, taking power for himself, merely placing himself in the role of an all-encompassing power instead of religion. The Emperor states that the difference between him and religion is that he knows he's right, and that his visions have shown him the path. Uriah warns the Emperor that this path is one that will lead him full circle back to the very place he's trying to take humanity away from. To deny mankind something is to make them covet it all the more. Uriah, now shaken from all the awe, sees the Emperor properly for the first time, and sees a man of ruthless ambition and violence. With that, Uriah walks back into his flaming church to die. When the church is nothing but debris and ash the next morning, the Emperor leaves to begin his crusade into the stars. As he leaves, the chiming of an old, broken clock can be heard emanating from the church's ruins. And so that was The Last Church by Graham McNeil. Yet another lovely character piece. It feels great to get this one-on-one time with the Emperor and watch him engage in what to me comes across as some kind of morbid superiority. He chose to come to this church himself. He chose to single-handedly try and tear this man's life apart while smugly wearing this facade of respect and understanding that he clearly only uses sparingly to manipulate and almost toy with Uriah. Knowing what happens in 40k makes this book very satisfying in a way, to know that Uriah was very much correct in his ascertainment of the Emperor, and the end of the path he is yet to take. To hear the Emperor talk of the Inquisition and its atrocities, while knowing full well of the Inquisition in 40k, really does make me wonder where the Emperor's head is at in this modern setting. He really did fail mankind, and in return, mankind failed him. Looking at this, I do kind of think it does make a better starting point than Valdor. A much smaller scale book that really focuses on the man behind the Imperium, his beliefs, why he believes it, and how he hopes to achieve spreading the message. It also gives a surprisingly vivid look at the world shortly after the Unification Wars. We see how the planet is functioning, we see the good and the bad, and what fighting back against the inevitable can get you. Springboarding from this into Valdor, for me, would have given a deeper understanding of what the Imperium is all about, and going from a story directly involving the Emperor to one that doesn't, would have also supplied context to the relationship the characters within the book may have had with the Emperor himself, and his vision. I definitely recommend checking it out yourself. The short story is contained within the anthology book called Tales of Heresy, or it can be purchased as an audiobook separately. As an atheist myself, it was an interesting book that really made me cringe at my younger self when I read some of the behaviours and arguments given, especially watching this genius pinnacle of mankind just dunk on this little hermit in his snug little church, relentlessly trying to take his one small harmless comfort in life away from him. And I know there's a bigger picture argument there, and it's on my to-do list to have a discussion about gods in this universe, because I find how it's handled here just so interesting, and the eternal debate about whether the Emperor was right and it was just everyone else that mucked it up. But that's a conversation for another time.
What are your thoughts on the story? And what story do you think comes first between Valdor, the Birth of the Imperium, and this one? Genuinely want to hear people's thoughts on that one, because after reading these two stories back to back, it does seem like The Last Church should have come first. Can anyone make my timeline correct again? So next, with wavering confidence in my ability to ascertain chronology, it's time to check in on the Primarchs, possibly the most notable one. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.